Hey guys, this is Alex Owari from ONG Tax and Accounting Services. So in this video, we're going to continue our series on the most common tax compliance checklist for foreign owners of single-member LLCs. And the focus on this video is going to be on New Mexico. So before we start off, let's just throw a word of caution out there, or throw a disclaimer out there that this video is meant for educational purposes only. It's not meant to be a legal or tax advice to you or to any other person. And if at any point in time you need help with a legal issue or a tax issue, you always need to consult a tax attorney or a CPA or an enrolled agent. Alright, so with the disclaimer out of the way, we're gonna dive straight into the three checklists that we've already talked about. I mean, I've done 3 videos so far. I've done one for Delaware, I've done one for Wyoming, and then the last one that I did was for Florida. In this case, we're going to look at single-member LLCs formed by foreign persons in New Mexico. So we'll start off with the 3 checklists, and this 3 checklist, it's basically important in cases where you're a foreign person and you're not considered to be engaged in U.S. trade or business. Then these 3 items is the most important things that you need to be aware of. However, if your activity causes you to have a U.S. trade or business or U.S. source income that is considered as FDAP, or you have an ECI or effectively connected income, then you have to add more to this list. So for example, if you're considered to be engaged in U.S. trade or business, if the LLC is owned by a foreign person or a non-resident alien, then you use a 1040 NR to report that effectively connected income. If the LLC is owned by a foreign corporation, then you will use an 1120F to make that report on the effectively connected income that you have. But this 3 checklist assumes that you're not considered to be engaged in U.S. trade or business, and really all that you have to do is this one. So we're going to look at the first one, which is 1120 and the 5472. I've talked about it in the previous video that if you are a single member LLC and where the LLC is owned by a foreign person, you have to file 1120 and 5472 as long as you have a reportable transaction with the LLC. So in the previous videos, I've explained what reportable transactions are, what the due dates are for these forms, and the penalty. So you can go watch it. The same thing with number 2 is the fact that in most states, every LLC that filed in that state needs to be in a good standing. And the only way an LLC can be in a good standing is usually by filing an annual report or biannual report or paying a franchise tax. You do some of these things to make sure that the LLC is in good standing. New Mexico specifically does not have an annual report. So if you form your LLC in New Mexico, you're one of those lucky people that do not have to worry about this annual report and biannual report and franchise tax. Okay, so we'll go to New Mexico specifically and look at their requirement. And then the third thing is, it doesn't matter which state you formed your LLC in, you need to make sure that you're maintaining your registered agent services, you're abiding by the contract that you've signed with your registered agent to make sure you're in good standing with the registered agent. In the previous video, I have explained why a registered agent is so important, so you should go watch those videos, which sets up a foundation for all of this checklist that we're doing. Alright, so with those 3 checklists out of the way, let's go back and look at the second checklist item, whether an LLC formed in New Mexico needs to file an annual report. And the fact is that New Mexico does not require an annual report. But then New Mexico have a reporting requirement, such as it requires the certain LLCs to file an income and an information return, which we call the pass-through entity tax or the pass-through entity tax return. However, the filing does not include a single member LLC that is treated as a disregarded entity. So I'm going to show you the page where it talks about that. So there's a little bit of confusion. I get a lot of foreigners that have formed a single member LLC in New Mexico, and they look at this pass-through entity tax return and they feel like they have to file it. And then we go into the details and we realize, well, okay, you have a single member LLC, and the laws or the rules that basically guide this requirement says that you're not required to file it if you own a single member LLC that's a disregarded entity. So really with New Mexico, all that you have to do as a foreign person who owns a single member LLC is to pay your registered agent services. So paying your registered agent services is going to continue to make sure that your LLC is active in New Mexico. So we're going to go straight to the New Mexico website to show you what really the New Mexico website is saying and why we think that a single member LLC is not required to file this pass-through entity return. All right, so this takes me to the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department. So I'm going to read a little bit about what this pass-through entity thing is. So when you read it here, it says that S corporations, LLCs, and other pass-through entities doing business in the state must file a New Mexico income tax return. And then it also goes on to say, effective January 1, 2012, a pass-through entity means a personal service business, or any other business association other than. Now, this other than confuses a lot of people, but basically means that you can replace it with except for. So it says that all of these companies is required to file, as long as they engage in business, they must file this New Mexico income tax return. But then when you go here, it says that effective January 1, 2012, a pass-through entity means a personal service business or any other business association except for. So it creates an exception for all of these entities. And the most important one that we're going to look at is the fact that it mentions a single member LLC here. So except for a single member LLC that is treated as a disregarded entity for federal income tax purposes. So right here, you have that exception. So if you are a foreign person that owns a single member LLC, that LLC is a disregarded entity and it's not required to file this pass-through entity. Now, we can look at other stuff. This one says a sole proprietor, an estate or trust that does not distribute income to beneficiaries. That's also an exception, right? Our focus is not on this one, but let's look at this one. It says a corporation, LLC, partnership, or other entity that is not a sole proprietorship taxed as a corporation for federal income tax purposes. So here it's basically saying that every pass-through entity is required to file this pass-through entity tax except for a corporation. If you're a corporation, obviously you're not a pass-through entity. And if you're a limited liability company that has elected to be taxed as a corporation, you are also not a pass-through entity. If you're a partnership that has elected to be taxed as a corporation, you're also not a pass-through entity. So the point I'm trying to make here is that we get it that a single member LLC is a pass-through entity, but for this specific purpose, this pass-through entity tax in New Mexico does not apply to disregarded entities. And disregarded entities, single member LLCs, which is owned by one person. That's a tautology right there, but it's an LLC owned by one person in cases where the LLC has not elected to be a corporation. So if your LLC has not elected to be a corporation and it's owned by one person, it's purely disregarded. So you don't have to file this form. So I hope this helps you out, and I will look forward to see you on the next video series that we'll be doing. Thank you. And if you have any questions, feel free to use the link below. And then you can also click share, like, and subscribe to the channel, and we'll bring you more stuff like this. So thank you and have a good day. Bye.